ago, a good friend of mine made the comment, one day these will be the good old days. And there's a lot of truth in that. And Fred, I'll let Fred tell you, how he got roped into doing this. And he's a good sport for doing this, but he has some really good stories to share with you this evening. And, his stories are about what most of us would call the good old days. But one day, the older we all get, right, the more we look back and we realize that, time is fleeting. I was talking with someone here, just a few minutes ago about how time passes along and you blink and another month, another year, another decade's gone. So as you listen to Fred's stories, kind of keep that in mind, because a lot of Fred's stories are about people he remembers and people who made an impact. And decades later, he still, carries a soft spot for these people because of something they did. And we can all be that to someone too. So, maybe, 20, 30 years from now, someone's looking back and remembering us in a good way like Fred's going to tonight. We are recording this for the library's YouTube channel. So, near the end, if you have any comments or anything, just keep in mind that we are being recorded. And I invite anyone, as Terry said, to visit us at the library. Come see what we're all about. Fred strolled into the PA room one day, and Fred is one of our board of directors members, and we have a couple other board of directors members here, and we thank all of you. We have some friends of the library here. There are volunteers who help with all of our fundraising, and we appreciate you all. One of the projects that our friends sponsored is the publication of this book that we put out last year in honor of Myersdale's 150th. We printed 750. We still have just over 100 left. If you'd like one, they're $25. The proceeds benefit the library. I do have a handful or two here tonight, but we also have some down at the library too. So we'll blink, it'll be Christmas. They make a nice Christmas present for someone with ties to Myersdale. But I will sit down, and all the pictures you're going to see here, if they don't have a little caption otherwise, they're part of our collections that the library obtained when the New Republic closed back in 2022. So enjoy, and thank you very much, Fred, for presenting this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen. Well, first of all, I have to say, I'm overwhelmed. I can't believe this number of people showed up. But what this tells me is there's an awful lot of people in town still interested in the history of our town, still has fond memories of our town. My buddies and I always said, we grew up in this town and in this country in the absolute best time you could possibly grow up. And I think just the turnout here is kind of a testament to that. Okay. This all started because this year St. Littleton James Catholic Church is celebrating their 100th Labor Day festival. We think that's quite an accomplishment. And in preparing things to get ready for the festival, I happened upon this old poster. And of course, my first thought was, what year is this poster from? Well, if you want to know something like that, the person you ask is Jennifer Hurl. Because if she can't figure it out, nobody can. Well, thanks to Jennifer, and thanks to Sue Toscano, we figured out that this is from 1973. Okay, and I started reading off all these old businesses so I was talking to Jen, and I started reading off all these old businesses. Every time I'd see one, I think, oh yeah, I remember when this happened at that business, and oh yeah, I remember when that happened at that business. And pretty soon she said, Fred, you keep talking, you're going to end up giving a speech. And I tried to cut it off there, but it was too late. belaboring things too long. And I want to thank, Jen has done a tremendous amount of work putting this slideshow together. It's a lot better to be able to look at things and besides just listening, it also gives you a frame of reference. So, if you would, Jen, you may not recognize that store right now, but that was the Quality Market on the corner of North Street and Center. It was owned by Woody Povenel. Okay? Well, that's the front of the Quality Market before 1966. Okay? This, and of course that's a look inside the Quality Market. If you remember, in Marysville at that time, there was a little grocery store on every block. A lot of people didn't drive, a lot of ladies didn't drive then, so you walked to the store, picked up what you needed, and walked back home. Okay? All right, well then, if you see the next slide, that's prior to 1966. And this is after 1966. You see the nice brick front there. Okay? My dad was always proud of building that nice brick front for Woody Povenel. But it was quite unintentional. It was prom night of 1966. Now I had a younger sister, Marion, who is now deceased, God rest her. We grew up in the same house, we were sired by the same parents, but we were different people. Okay? And try as she might, she never could make me cool. She tried but couldn't do it. Well, after it was prom night, and we decided she said, we're going to have a few kids over to the house after the prom. Some mom said, run into Woody's and get some soda and some potato chips and some snacks, and we'll have that for him after the prom. Okay, so she jumps in the car. In the meantime, unbeknownst to Dad, Marion had begun smoking. Okay. Now, but she had a good reason. She read in a magazine article that Audrey Hepburn, the famous actress, took up smoking because she felt it kept her thin. And if it was good enough for Audrey Hepburn, it was good enough for Marion. So, Marion, I stopped up at a friend's house up on Upper High Street, Dolores, some people remember Dolores Pennington. So then she was coming back down North Street, and she's getting ready to turn on the center, and about that time the cigarette dropped out of her mouth, and it was on her seat, and it was burning her leg, and she's reaching down, and meantime the car keeps turning, and when she looked up, all of a sudden the car's headed straight for Woody's, and she panicked. Instead of hitting the brake, she hit the accelerator right into Woody's. Drove right through Woody's school. Okay, so of course we're home. The phone rings. You know, Dad, you better get up to Woody's. You know, there's been an accident. Nobody's been hurt. So Dad had to go up and get things straightened out. And of course, Marion's top thought was, well, I gotta get ready for the prom. You know, Woody's will take care of itself. So, of course, Dad then had to get things all straightened out, and it was agreed. You know, Dad agreed to replace the stuff that got busted up, and he replaced the front. Didn't turn it into insurance because you didn't do that then. Anyway, so I had to take the flower truck, drive Marion home, and Mom had heard, I guess over the phone, what Marion had done. And Mom's first words were, Marion, when I told you to run into Woody's to get snacks, I didn't mean run into Woody's. But, you know, that was the last thing on our mind. As long as she looked good at the prom, she was good. Okay. Well, right beside Woody's, there's a picture of Bill Grasser. Now, most of us will remember when Bill Grasser had his sweet shop where Studio 7 Dance Studio is now. A lot of people forget, when he first opened, I don't know if you have a shot of that, Jen. When he first opened, he was in a little store. See, that's him at his later on store. When he first opened, he was in, you have that other shot of the Quality Market? He was in a little store right beside the Quality Market, right here. That's where he first started. I was in the 6th grade. I was a patrol boy. And of course, I didn't have his spot right away. Just about the time it got to be winter, started getting cold, I got assigned to that crossing. And so I'd show up in the morning, it'd be cold, and there wouldn't be any kids coming yet. So I'd walk into Bill's, and oh boy, he had all those pastries and all those cookies, and I'm standing around looking around at this, you know. Finally, Bill said, "Hey, those look pretty good." "Yeah." I says, "You like any of those cookies?" "Yeah, that one looks good." He'd reach in, he'd give me the cookie. He says, you better get on duty." "Okay." Yeah. So I did my duty. There he is. I did my duty. Of course, next morning I show up. "Hey, it's cold again." I'm in that store, and I'm looking around, and Bill's, "How was that cookie yesterday?" "Oh, that was pretty good." He says, "You know," I said, of course, I'm thinking, "That one looks even better." Oh, he said, "Well, let's see." So he reaches in and gives me a cookie. Okay. So I walked in, and I was on that post, fortunately for Bill, for only about 2 weeks. But he gave me a free cookie every morning for 2 weeks. And of course, maybe he sent my dad a bill for a dozen cookies. I don't know. But you know, when you look back at that, he didn't have to do that. You know, could say, "Beat it, kid. You got, you know, I'm trying to run a business here." You know, and I had that wasn't my last business with Bill Grasser. Last good business. Okay, so but keep that in mind. Out, he was a good sport like that. Okay, here's one of my favorites. Not Electric and Jim Knight. How many people remember a TV show called The Real McCoys? Okay. Well, the Real McCoys, of course, were kind of a country family, and they didn't get to town very often. But one night, the story opens up. The Real McCoys are sitting there watching TV, and you're thinking, "My gosh, they're moving up in this world. The Real McCoys got a TV." And then the camera pans back, and they're standing outside on the street looking at a TV inside a storefront. Okay? You guys know what I'm going to say. Well, Jim Knight used to have a TV in his storefront. And when we were kids, we'd be coming home from the Roxy Theater on a Friday night, or State Theater. You'd walk down the Center Street, and there'd be people standing outside watching the TV through Jim Knight's window. Okay. But that's the lighter side of the story, but this tells you something about Jim Knight here. I don't know if you have the picture of the greenhouses up. A lot of these stories took place not about the greenhouses, but kind of because we had them. Okay? These are the greenhouses, and I'll have more to say about that later. But this was the dreaded boiler room. There are any number of jobs to do around the greenhouses. The last job you wanted was overnight boiler room duty in the middle of the winter. Okay? Well, it's overnight in the middle of the winter. There I am on boiler room duty. I'm about 18 years old. I think I'd come home from college. I was maybe 19, something like that. And I'm doing boiler room duty. And that's miserable work. You shovel coal, you pull ashes, you water them down, you're in steam, it's hot, it's cold. That was just a miserable job. So anyway, I was on boiler room duty one night. And it's cold, it's windy, and along the wall of the boiler room, there were 4 switches. These switches operated the fans on the boiler automatically. You didn't have to touch them. These operated them by hand. You could make more heat when you wanted it, or make them run when you wanted to. It's about 1:30 in the morning, and the fans went off. The boilers quit making steam. Now my dad was out on a trip. Uncle Joe had gotten pretty old and kind of feeble at the time, and they just quit working. And I'm up there, I'm flipping switches, and I'm kind of panicking. The steam is starting to get cold. Man, I don't want to be responsible for losing all those greenhouses full of flowers. So what do you do? What do you do? I ran up to the house and looked up Jim Knight's phone number. And I called him at 1:30 in the morning. And Jim, I got a problem here. I can't get these boards to run. I don't understand what's wrong with the switches. Can you help me out? Now, number one, why would he even believe me? I'm a kid. You know, why would he? He said, hold on, Freddie, I'll be right down. And 50 minutes later, there's Jim Knight. He's going around with his little light in there. You know, he's crossing wires. I didn't know what he was doing. But finally he said, he flicked something, it came on. You know, and whatever, he said, okay, he said, that should get you through the night. He said, you've got some problems in here, but we'll come down tomorrow and we'll get it straightened out. Okay, fine, Jim. And of course, I don't know where I was next day, but they came down and got it straightened out. But I'm thinking, you know, he didn't have to do that. And if somebody ever bought a defective appliance or something from Jim Knight, they probably cursed him out. But he did things like that. So that's a story worth telling. You know, it's good things people do. Oh boy, okay, this one will take me a little while. But one of the advertisers was Bruno Shoe Store. Now Gene Bruno and my dad were old buddies from Shaw Mines. Their families all moved in town about the same time. But when I saw Bruno Shoe Store, that's not the first thing I thought. The first thing I thought was another shoe store in town that was owned by Emilio D'Ascenzo. Remember? Okay. Affectionately called Dingo. And there he is, okay, when his wife and family had just come over from Italy. Now look at him. He's not real tall, but he's square-jawed, he's barrel-chested. Remember, he was big and strong, had big arms on him, and he was deaf. Okay? Well, when we were kids and he was also a huge baseball fan. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, nobody had heard of the NBA. The NFL was just getting off the ground. So baseball was truly the national pastime. And he was a huge baseball fan. Okay. Anybody I'm sure some people recognize what this is. What is this? It's a scoreboard. It's a baseball scoreboard. Okay. Well, when we were kids, and it wasn't just me, but it seemed like I got the honors more often than most. On Sunday afternoons, his shop was closed. And the Pirate game was on the radio. These baseball games weren't on TV like they are now. The Pirate game was on the radio, but what good did that do Dingo? He was deaf. So you'd see him walking outside the store. He'd be looking down. He'd see one of the kids coming. Come on, buddy! Come on, buddy! Ball game. Well, you knew what Dingo wanted. He would. I didn't know. We could talk about that later. He would call you in, and you'd go in his shop. He never took you back in the house, but you go in the shop. He'd turn on the radio, he'd turn the game on the radio, give you a scorebook. And you would sit there on his shaw, and you would keep score. And then you would show Dingo what happened, and that's how he followed the game. Okay? And it was just like he was at the game. I mean, Parrots would get a couple of hits, he stuck in, come on, Buccos, you know, and then Roberto Clemente would come up, come on, Roberto, hit a home run, you know. And then, of course, every once in a while, I'd have to write down the symbol for strikeout, which was a K. I'd put down the K, and he'd go, I can't repeat it in church. And then after a couple innings, he'd disappear into the house. He'd come out with a bottle of homemade wine, big hunk of cheese. He'd grab one of the knives that he used to cut shoe leather, cut you a big hunk of cheese, and there you are, you're 12 years old, you're listening to the game, you're drinking wine, you're eating cheese. Life is good. Life is good. But on the other hand, think about, can you imagine today if some old guy had a little kid in his room by themselves and he's giving him alcohol? Can you imagine what they do to that guy? A lot of these stories come under the heading of this could never happen again, and that's one of them. Well, we're not done with Dingo, right? Did you have a picture right there? This is George Gray, well-known pitcher way back in the 60s. We were in the American Legion playoffs. We had that trophy has something to do with that. But we had pretty good ball teams, and we were playing Point Marion. And by the way, some former students might be interested to know. You remember Mr. Yednock? Mr. Yednock discovered Myersdale because he was the coach of the Point Marion baseball team. That's how he discovered Myersdale. Okay, and that team went on and finished runner-up in the state. That was quite a team he had. Well, we gave them all they wanted for two. I mean, they just barely beat us 2 games. Had we not run into them, I mean, we could have gone a long way. But anyway, we're playing Point Marion. It's been a hot, dry summer. The baseball field in town is dry. And at that time, the Little League was still playing there. The Little League bases are 60 feet. Grown-up bases are 90 feet. Well, we're playing the game, and Point Marion's got a guy on second base, and they get a hit. And the way you used to put the bases on is there were these long spikes with a little loop on the top. You draw the spike into the ground, and then there's a strap on the base. You pull it through the loop and tie it together, and that's how the base stayed down. Well, they had the bases up, but the spikes were still in the ground at 60 feet. So the Point Marion kid came around and tripped over something on the way in the home plate, and we got him out. Well, he got up, started complaining. Well, here he had tripped over the Little League spike at third base. Well, Point Marion, they're thinking they're big time. They're complaining, well, this can't go on. Got to get rid of those spikes. The coaches, the umpires, they're pulling on those spikes. You got 2 guys on it. Man, those spikes were baked in there. They would not come out. Pretty soon, you hear, "Watch out, buddy. Watch out. It's Dingo. He's got an old spike." Okay? And he takes the old spike, sticks it under the loop. Okay? On first base. And there's a huge crowd there. I mean, the Myersdale Republic used to publicize the games. We were pretty well known, and there was the biggest crowd for a baseball game you've ever seen down there. And so Dingo's under the spike. A couple expletives out loud in front of everybody. Boom! Out comes the spike. And he walks over to second base and sticks it underneath him. expletive, a little couple extra expletives, you know, boom, out comes the spike. So he goes over to third base and put it under there, you know. Swear word, whoa, swear word, whoa, louder, more swear words. All of a sudden, boom, up comes the spike. Well, he's deaf, but everybody in that crowd stood up and started applauding, okay? He looked and figured out they were applauding for him. Always had a straw hat on. He starts walking off, tips his hat, and yells, "Play ball!" You know, so, and Dingo will, well, I might as well finish with it. Okay, this trophy, now trophies were hard to come by at that time. I have a grandson that's 12 years old. He's got a shelf full of trophies, okay? I played a lot of ball, all kind of different things when I was young. I earned 3 trophies. Now, I'd like to say I earned them because you had to earn them then, okay? Well, anyway, this was the trophy. At the end of 3 seasons, we had won the county every year, and then we won the district the last year. And so the American Legion gave us a banquet. Not after the first year, not after 3 years of winning and winning the districts, they gave us a banquet, and it was open to the public. So, and they bought us these trophies. So they, well, we knew about it, and somehow they ordered an extra trophy. So we had to, and Dingo, once again, that was a good crew right there. Dingo, once again, you know, if you tore your glove, you took it into Dingo, he sewed it up. No charging, buddy. You tore your spike, you took it into Dingo, he sewed it up, you know. No charging, buddy. You know, that kind of thing. So, and he never missed a game. You know, we played on Tuesday evenings, Sunday afternoons, he never missed a game. So, at the banquet, after they gave them all, we had we knew we had an extra trophy. So we decided that we, you know, give it to Dingo. And I gotta be careful here because this is one of the most moving things I've ever seen. He's sitting there in the crowd. A couple of us took it over and handed it to Dingo. Like, is that for me? You know? And the biggest, toughest, meanest guy in town broke down into tears. He broke into tears. And you could have heard a pin drop in that. I mean, you know, as kids, I don't think we'd ever see a man cry. You know, and then somebody, okay, gotta get back to the banquet and stuff, you know. But and of course that trophy sat in his shop till he closed up shop. Okay, but talk about a moving moment, you know. So that's where that came from. Just for old time's sake, you may recognize some of these guys. Unfortunately, several of them are no longer with us. It's hard for me to imagine that. But some of them, Dave Phillip is no longer with us, and George Gray is no longer with us. So that I think Bob Weaver is no longer with us. That's enough about baseball, but I'm telling you that was a good ball team.
Did you want to mention this one with Bill, Fred?
Pardon?
This one with the picture with Bill?
Oh, well, Bill was big in the American Legion. And of course, we were always trying to, and he would help out with the baseball team once in a while. We were always trying to collect money. And he's just shown there making a donation that we put in the paper, and then we were out about town with those cups and trying to collect money. But I couldn't remember where that picture came from. I thought about it after we talked to him, but he was always helping out with the baseball team. So in case you hadn't recognized, that's me when I had hair. Okay, I think. Oh, okay. Well, listen, I could do an entire hour just on the greenhouses, and I could do 2 hours on my dad. But that's another story. So let's the Pastor Brothers floors. Okay. And everybody remember G.C. Murphy? A lot of people always wondered, how did you guys sell all those flowers? This is just a little town. Where do you get rid of all those flowers? Well, it so happened, there's a G.C. Murphy in every little town around. Okay. My dad had a contract with about 40 G.C. Murphys. That was the crux of the business. Okay. And trucks went out to G.C. Murphy and once in all other places every Tuesday and every Friday. And we had our different runs. Okay. The West Virginia run, the Pittsburgh run, the Uniontown, Brownsville, California run. I mean, we had these different routes that you would try to supply people. And of course, there was a G.C. Murphy in Marysville. Now at Easter time, all the G.C. Murphys, they all had a flower department, which Dad supplied. Well, G.C. Murphy in Marysville, their manager was expected to have a flower display too. Okay, but that guy couldn't sell any flowers in Marysville. Everybody got them from us. And then of course it didn't do any good for his bottom line to get stuck with all these flowers. Okay, so it didn't matter who the guy was. Dad would sell him a big order of flowers, whatever the G.C. Murphy did. They wouldn't sell any to amount to anything. Saturday morning before Easter, he'd run up and buy them all back. So the guy, it cost and stuff, but so the guy wouldn't have to report a loss. And by that time, we probably needed him anyway. Okay, but once again, he didn't have to do that. That wouldn't happen anywhere but in a small town. But he always made sure that the guy never showed a loss. And every once in a while though, it paid off because those guys would get promoted to a bigger store and they kept ordering from Pasco Brothers because they remembered Dad. Okay. Well, this is a little off the. Somebody asked me, did we have garden plants? Yes, we did. Right after Mother. Oh, I see. The reason why this picture is in there, another thing we did, people don't, and that you could never do it anymore. That's a whole greenhouse full of mums in bloom. These are on their way. They used to time them, so you always had, okay? But we had snapdragons, stalk, pom-poms, carnations, calla lilies. And there's only so many people die in Marysville and Rockwood. Even though back then it seemed like there was always somebody. But there were 3 or 4 flower shops in Cumberland. Okay, so and they would advertise fresh flowers for their arrangements. Well, fresh flowers indeed. Dad or a couple of the workers would be out in the greenhouses at 5 o'clock in the morning. They cut flowers, mums, pom-poms, snapdragons, whatever you needed, carnations, box them up, take them up to the train station. The train left at 8:05, got to Cumberland at 8:50. The flower shop there would pick up their flowers, take them back to their stores, and they indeed had fresh flowers. Okay, and can't do that today. Number one, there's no train, but it was, and of course it worked for us too. It was a handy market, but And of course, the thing about all that is, when they're expecting flowers, you better have them. So you had to know. The same way with G.C. Murphy. When they called for a load, you couldn't say, well, we're a little short right now. Yeah, they could get flowers a lot of places, so there's a little bit of pressure to keep the flowers going there. Well, okay, Jen doesn't have anything on there. I have a note here, Lena Buckley. This is another, you know, my dad wasn't a big preacher. He didn't give us lectures, you know. He did stuff by 3-word comments and by his example. So right after Mother's Day, it was planting season around here. Tomatoes, cabbage, everybody planted a garden. And back then, you know, gardens were huge. Well, Dad, you know, you can grow plants, start them in seeds in the greenhouses and stuff. The plants are soft. If you plant them and it gets a little cold, they don't take much cold. So we would go to Franklin, Virginia, which is down close to Roanoke. We would drive down all day, load up 100,000 plants. Hard to imagine. There were 1,000 in a box. We'd get 100 boxes in the truck. You drive down all day, load up 100,000 plants: tomatoes, cabbage, peppers, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, kale, all that. And we'd bring them back and sell them here. And they were grown in the fields outside. So they were already pretty hardy. So when we brought them back here, if you planted them, they would withstand a cold spring night around here, okay? So they were very popular. I probably shouldn't add this, but we used to buy 1,000 tomato plants for $3, and we brought them up here and sold them for 20 cents a dozen. Do the math. It was worth running down and back, you know, even though, but you know, people were happy with them. They got their gardens. They didn't usually lose them, and at that time you'd have to make at least 2 trips a year. Well, anyway, one of the first times I rode down with him, I was just old enough to drive, so I was helping out with the driving a little bit. We picked up the plants, and then we got back close to Winchester, and Dad turns off, and I'm like, well, this is the way we're home. I didn't know where we were going, but he drove about 20 miles out of the road, and we stopped at this old-time restaurant. It was owned by a lady named Lena Buckley. I said, what are you doing? Oh, he says, I got some plants for this lady here. Oh, okay, he's selling plants, I understand it. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, we've been all day, maybe 3. So, boy, the lights come on. You know, oh, hi, Fred, I'm so glad to see you. I was afraid you wouldn't make it, you know. And she got like, you know, 2,000 tomatoes, 1,000 cabbage, you know, 500 sweet potatoes. I mean, it wasn't a big order at all. But, you know, he drove out of his way, and so we unloaded. And of course, you know, oh, come on here, Fred. You guys must be hungry. Let me make you something to eat. So she's whipping up some breakfast, you know. And of course, Dad, you know, we got to get back, but he's not going to be rude. So she fixes us a breakfast, and we ate hearty and jumped in the truck and started going. And me always having a little bit of a business head, I picked up the bill, and I looked at the bill. I said, Dad, you didn't make any money on this deal. I said, you charged her the same amount we paid for it. And he looked at me and says, if I have to make any money on that lady, I'm in the wrong business. And then he said, well, of course, she fed us, didn't she? That was the end of it. So any time we went down, there was always a side venture to Lena Buckley's. And, you know, it's things that people do. But sometimes your good deeds actually come back on you. Anybody, I'm sure some of you older people recognize that guy. Stan Musial, known one of the most famous baseball players of the 50s. He would be your 1950s version of Aaron Judge, some of the big Latin players. He was in like 20 consecutive All-Star games in the National League. 20 consecutive, as Ted Williams was like in 20 consecutive All-Star games in the American League, okay? Well, we're back to G.C. Murphy. Dad is in Donora, Pennsylvania, and he's unloading flowers for the Donora G.C. Murphy. And he's in an alley getting flowers ready. Here comes this little old lady walking down the alley. Now, you talk about a sucker for a little old lady. You know, that was my dad. She walks in and she looks back and she goes, "Oh, what beautiful flowers, aren't they nice?" You know, "Oh," and Dad, "Which one you like, honey? Which one?" "Oh, well, that one's pretty. Here, take it." "Oh, I couldn't. No, it's yours. Take it. I hope you enjoy it, you know." Okay. She walks off, you know. And so he finishes the load, unloading, and he's getting ready to go. And here she comes back down the street. And Dad's thinking, she must have a sister or something, you know. So he's getting ready to give away another flower. And she walks up and she says, "Oh, mistress, is that flower's so pretty?" She says, "I wonder," says, "do you have a boy?" "Yes, I do." "Does he like baseball?" "Oh, very much." I said, "Well, maybe he'll like this. This is my boy." And it was an autographed baseball by Stan Musial. Here he had given a flower to Stan Musial's mother. He was known as the Donora Dandy. Okay? Now, my fondest hope was to be able to bring that ball to the speech tonight and show everybody my Stan Musial ball, but I cannot find that thing. And it's just like this trophy had 4 little guys. I have no idea where the other 2 got to. I mean, I don't get the trophies out and play with them. I mean, our moves from one house to another, this and that. Somehow I lost track of that state. That's the unusual ball. And it's a brand new baseball. You know, that's another one of those that, you know, the good deed came back to. And then there's this one. It got to the point later on that they could grow plants in the South very cheaply, easily, you know, philodendron pothos, snake plants, you know, not blooming plants, but the green plants. So he got to the point where he could order them from Florida and have them shipped in, cheaper than producing them in the greenhouses. So he started ordering plants from the South. Well, one day they're waiting for an order of plants to come in, but it's a snowy, it's wintry day, you know, plants didn't come. We're in bed at 1 o'clock at night, and you hear this motor running outside. It's this truck loaded with plants. Now, I kind of need this it was snowy. We had this thing, the steam pipe wasn't really that high. Snow was piled up here. The guy was trying to back the truck in, but he could only get to about here. And, you know, he had like 100 boxes of plants. And not being racist, the truck driver was a black truck driver. He took one step out of that truck. He said, "It's too cold for me." Back in the truck. He was sitting. He couldn't move. So here we are with these plants, and we didn't have time to. It was already getting cold. Those trucks weren't heated. So how are we going to get all these trucks unloaded? So Dad says, "Hold on, I'll be back." He walks down to Paul's Tavern. okay, at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday or something like that. He comes back with 6 or 7 guys in various states of inebriation. Okay. They formed an assembly line, okay, and I fortunately got to be in here. I was inside. But it's cold, it's snowy, you know, these guys out in their coats, and they started their hand, just going, you know, we're getting these plants off, we got all the plants in, you know, by this time it's 1:30 or so, you know, and we got him in, and truck driver took off. Dad says, all right, you can go on back up to bed now. He says, tell your mother I'll be back. Back down the poles, had to buy everybody drinks. Who knows when he got back, you know. Then he had to get, but try doing that somewhere today, you know. It just, he may not have even known all those guys, although he probably did. But you know, just the fact that they didn't think twice. They need some help down there, and they jumped up, and you know, and these are probably guys you wouldn't think were the A-list of people, but it didn't take them long to get down there. Okay, this is just a cute little. Yeah, look at Baldwin's men's store. Look at that place. You could buy anything you needed. If you were a guy, you could buy anything you needed. I mean, it was, you know, it was. I mean, Toda, they had shoes downstairs, something. If you needed it, they had it, you know. Really, really missed that. Didn't they? Yes, you needed it, they had it. So, anyway, that's Mike Katie, right there, who ran it for all those years. It's just, I'm about 16, 17. It happens that there's this young lady in school that I was kind of trying to impress, and I found out that she liked plays, and so I'd heard about the Jonestown Playhouse. So anyway, there was a Sunday show at Jonestown Playhouse. So okay, I just thought I don't know, I called down or something. I don't think I had tickets ahead of time, but yeah, we could get to that play at Jonestown. So I asked her if she'd like to go to this play. Oh yeah, great, you know. And of course, I found out in the meantime, if you go to that time, you had to wear a coat and tie to the play, right? You had to wear a coat and tie. Yeah. The last coat I had, I think, was for my first communion, so I'd outgrown that a little bit. So it's Sunday, I don't have a sport coat. You know, well, didn't take me long to walk down the street to Mike Katie's, knock on the door. Hey, Mike, got this date tonight. I need a coat. I said, can we run up to the store, get a coat? Oh, sure, Freddie. You know, jump in the car. You know, we drive up to White. Oh, he says, let me get my keys. You know, back there, Steve. We drive up, and we go, and he's showing me jackets and stuff, and I found one that fit, looked pretty good. You know, that one okay with you? Yeah. You know, I think I can. He says, do you have a pair of pants with it? Well, I said, I have some black dress pants. Oh yeah, that'll work. Got a white shirt. Yeah. Well, and while we're talking, Jim Dietz, old Jim, just happens to be walking by. He looks in, he walks in and says, what are you guys doing? Mike says, oh, we're fixing Freddie up here. He's got a hot date tonight or something, you know. I wanted to be impressive. I knew that she would already be impressed when I showed up in the flower delivery van. But I wanted to do a little better than that. So we're in there, and they said, do you have a tie? Jim said, oh, you need a nice maroon tie to go with that. And so Jim walks over, and he takes the tie off the rack, and he hands it to me. I looked at it, and says, do you know how to tie that? Not really. So, come here. And Jim Dietz stands me in front of the window, in front of the mirror, and he ties the tie for me, you know. He says, now you do it. Well, I got so far, take it apart, now watch again. He ties it again. Took me about 3 times, but he, you know, I got her down. He says, "Now, Taylor," he goes, "don't take it apart, just loose it up, pull it over your head. You'll be good." But there they are on a Sunday afternoon. They had other things to do besides dress me. But there they were, Jim was sometimes the brunt of some jokes, but talk about a good guy at heart, and he always treated me great. Oh, I got to keep moving here. How about let's look at the Citizens Bank and Thomas Drug Store. These go together. Okay. All right. Well, when I was in high school, I kind of used to hang out at Thomas Drug Store. Friday night, nothing going on. Get dressed up. I'd go pester old Frank and the guys working in the drugstore. And there's Citizens Bank. Friday nights, Citizens Bank would be open, and Sam Filson, the owner, he'd be in the bank somehow, but he really didn't like being a banker on Friday nights. So a lot of times he'd walk out of the bank, he'd come into the drugstore. I don't know if you remember this or not, Nate. He'd come into the drugstore, get an ice cream cone, okay, and we'd stand out there eating ice cream and talking about this and that, watching the girls go by. And why he bothered talking to a kid is beyond me, but maybe I was the only one around. It's pretty soon somebody come to the door, wave at him, and go, "I got to go do business here. Hold my ice cream." I'm holding his ice cream. He's not coming back. So take it in the store and dump it in the sink. That was the end of the ice cream. So Sam and I were kind of friends. Well, after I graduated from college, I was a little tired of driving flower vans, and I'd been hired at the school to teach, so I knew I was going to have some money coming in. So I thought, I'm going to buy myself a car. And there was a 1969 GTO out at Nagy's Olds. Okay, and Junior Nagy had been driving it for a while, so they were willing to sell it as a used car, and it was $3,600. Okay, well, 36, and I think my salary at the time was 54. But I had to have that car, so I need a loan. I walked in to see Sam. I said, "Sam, I was graduating from school. Yeah, I heard that." He said, "Yeah, there's a car out at Nagy Olds I'd like to get." "Yeah." He said, "How much is it?" I said, $3,600. Oh, he says, "Okay." He says, "How much do you have down?" And I went, "Down?" "Yeah, when you get a loan, you're supposed to have some money of your own." "Oh, no, well, I didn't know that." I said, "You need all $3,600? Yeah. Oh boy, okay, here." He goes in, he gets me a check for $3,600. So, a couple years later, Judy and I got married, and there was not a place in Myersdale to rent or to buy. Not a one. We looked everywhere. Dad wanted me to put a trailer down at the greenhouses. That wasn't happening. I was, trying to get away a little bit. Jack Smith was building a little apartment in what was the old Roxy Theater. It was lately the Treasure Hut. That whole apartment was about 5 pews here. It was tiny. But anyway, Judy and I needed to set up housekeeping, and we had no money. So we checked around and see what things cost and everything. So, boy, it's going to take us about $4,000 to set up housekeeping. So I go in to see Sam. "Sam, I just got married." "Yeah, I heard that." Yeah, I got a place up town here, so that we need, furniture and appliances. I said, "I need about $4,000. All of that stuff costs about $4,000. "Oh, okay." He says, "How much do you have down?" And I says, "You mean for that too?" "Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I don't really." He said, "Oh, I don't know why I do this." He gives me a check for $4,000, and we go buy furniture. Well, we were in that apartment for a couple of years, and another apartment a couple of years. The Deal Mansion, by the way. We lived in the Deal Mansion before it was the Deal Mansion. So then we had one child and another one on the way. I thought, well, it's time to get a house. So found a house up on High Street, and it was $18,000. My wife saying I was $18,000. So I went and see Sam. Hey, Sam, I found a house I like. Oh yeah, he said, how much is it? I said, $18,000. And he goes, well, how much yet? Never mind. I said, never mind. He says, you need $18,000, right? I said, right. Try buying a house today without a down payment. Stuff, let's say, stuff you could do then, you can't do today. You know, I mean, just, Sam just, just never let me down, okay? All right, now, look, I'll tell you what, that's my man. I was fond of him. I didn't tell you this. I had taken over the greenhouses briefly, okay? And all those cut flowers you saw in that one picture, nothing was happening, things were slow. Man, we had cut flowers everywhere. And I thought, man, we got to get rid of some. I told Dad, I said, we got to try to sell some of these cut flowers. And, okay, you know, some on the phone, I'm selling these cut flowers, go to flower shops and stuff. And I'm selling. Dad says, now don't get crazy. You need, you know, keep a couple around. You know, why would I listen to somebody who might know? So I oversold them. Just about the time we got nice and low on flowers, Sam Filson died. And the phone orders started coming in like crazy, okay? Dad, what did I tell you? So there's Fred on the phone buying back the flowers that I just sold, okay? But at more than I sold them. You know, we took a beating on that, but that was a hard lesson learned. Okay, I got it. Now I'm not gonna. This subject isn't football, but I was out at the. That's Robertson Sunoco. We'll get to. I was out at the football game the other night, and so it just so happened Dennis Stahl, which Stahl was out there too. Judy was sitting in between us. And boy, she get an earful. So I'm sure she probably wish she was sitting somewhere else. So the team came out, and 40 kids, and then the coaching staff came out. You know, 8 coaches, and there was a trainer, you know, and an assistant trainer, and all that. Okay. Well, back in the day, the coaching staff was Jen.
You and Butch.
Yeah. That was the coaching staff. Butch and me. That was it. Butch did offense, I did defense, he did the backs, I did the linemen. And still 40 kids. Okay, that was just but that's not what it's about. But Butch is actually the one that mentioned that all those coaches came out. He leaned over to me and said, hey, remember when that was just you and me? I said, oh. Yeah. So we can go back to Roy Robertson's Sunoco station. It was right across the street where I lived in that first apartment. We had just started coaching. And Roy, being the businessman that he was, always tried to talk to his customers. And so I'd go over for gas, and he said, how you doing? Freddie, oh, just fine. Butch and I just started coaching. How you doing, Freddie? I'm fine. He said, how'd the team do last week? I said, we won. He said, how are they doing? Oh, we've won some, we've lost some. He said, you know what they need out there is some new coaches. And I said, well, yeah, maybe you're right, Roy. Those guys are pretty young. I don't know, maybe they're not going to be. So I'd come back a week later for gas, and how'd they do this week? Oh, we won, Oh, she says, did they get new coaches? No, Roy. No, Roy, that's still the same group. I said, I think they're getting the idea a little bit. And that's really all I wanted to say. But but just as soon as I saw Robertson Sunoco, I couldn't help but think about Roy wanting new coaches all the time. getting to the end here, folks. So, oh, two good stories. People over here remember Bolden's Plumbing? Okay. There was Joe and Jim and Butch. A lot of people forget or didn't know there was an older brother named John. John was crippled. He was always up at the store. Okay. Well, down at the greenhouses, again, we had a water pump that pumped water up from the Flockety Creek because we watered every day. And that water pump was running all the time, and it was getting old, and it would break down. Andy Tatterell, God bless him, was pretty handy. He could usually get it running again, but one day it broke down good, and he's tearing it apart. He walks over to me, he says, Freddie says, run up to Bolden's. He says, ask John if he's got a part like this. Man, he says, we, better get that pump running. So I jumped the truck, ran up to John, and I said, John, you have this part. Boy, he looked at that. Oh, he says, that part's ancient. He says, that off your water pump? Yeah. Oh, he said, they don't make that anymore. Now, today, if that's the case, that's it. So I said, well, what are you going to do? John's looking at it a little bit, Well, he says, give me a minute here. Pretty soon he's rooting around in the bins, and he breaks out a pipe at one side and puts some threads on it, and breaks out another pipe, and then he gets another little piece of metal, and he's heating it up with a torch, and he's pounding on it. He's cutting a little thing off a little piece of tin, and he's looking for rubber washers, and it was there about 40, 45 minutes. And so he walks over and says, here, take that down to Andy. He says, tell him that'll probably work. I took it down, Andy put her on there, off went the pump. Now, I challenge you to go to Lowe's and tell somebody there, hey, I need somebody to make me this part. Not a chance. Wow. I was just amazed at, what you have to know, how many years you have to have into something to, okay. To finish up here. Here's my man, Frank Shanholz. Now, I just mentioned the house that I bought because Sam Filson gave me a house with no down payment. Okay. Well, once I got a house, it occurred to me that a house has grass, and you got to mow the grass. Well, I didn't have a mower, nor did I have any money to buy a lawnmower. So, of course, I ran over to Keystone Street, Frank Shanholz, and Toro Mowers, Lawn Boy, sells the truck. Frank, have you got a old used lawnmower around here? Maybe I can get. I said, I don't need a mower, I don't have a lot of money. So, Frank, I don't know, he always called me Junior. He called my dad Fred. I was Fred Junior, so he just called me Junior. I don't know, Junior, let me look around. He looks around, he pulls out this old mower, he walks over, he gets a spark plug off another mower, and he gets a rope off another one, and he's putting the wheel on, and he put a mower together from about 4 or 5 different mowers, and pulled the cord, up it started, okay, Frank, that'll be fine. I said, how much to owe you? Oh, he says, $5. So I bought my first lawnmower for $5 and used it the whole time that we lived up there. But here's the thing we thank Frank. And Frank, if you remember, Frank was what's the word I'm looking for? Peculiar character. Yeah, he was a different character. Okay, wasn't real popular with everybody. But he always go by how people treat me. Well, in 1959 or 60, we had a priest here named James Kirkpatrick. Now, Jim Kirkpatrick was a good priest. He was very popular in the parish. Okay, but he did one thing that nobody really cared for. Can you show the picture of the old church?
This is a picture of the old church. And see these Stations of the Cross, how big they are? Okay. And they were nice, but they were pretty much, I just remember, all gray. Okay. Well, in 1959 or 60, Father Kirkpatrick decided the church had to be remodeled. And during the remodeling, they got rid of all those old stations and put up, oh my gosh, these little, they were about that big. It was just ahead of Jesus, and it would have one word on it: condemned. You know, another one, fell. Another, I mean, they were, oh my gosh, compared to the ones we had, nobody was happy with those old stations. Well, this went from like 1961 to 1989, when Father Bunn decided this church needed remodeled again. And the remodeling committee is sitting around, Frank's there, and of course somebody mentioned, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could get those old stations back. Frank jumps up and says, I've been waiting 30 years to hear that. Here Frank had taken all those old stations down, and this is out at Maple Valley Park. Frank had a warehouse, had a barn out at Maple Valley Park, and he had those old stations stored out there for 30 years. And then what we did, we gathered them all, and they were in, you know, fair amount of disrepair. So we sent them out to a place in Altoona that does stations. They took all the old concrete off of them and surrounded them with wood and painted the figures. And if you go to any Catholic church, those Stations of the Cross are as nice as any Stations of the Cross you'll see in any Catholic church, unless you go to some huge cathedral. Okay, so just things to remember that people did. Well, with that, I think we've kept you long enough. I want to thank you again for coming out and sitting through this. And we invite you all to the 100th Labor Day Festival. There'll be a great meal. It's $13 for adults, where can you eat for $13? $13 for adults, $7 for kids 12 and under. There'll be some games out in the back, but we try not to hit you for too much money. Okay. Now, I hesitate to say we do have some light refreshments over in the hall, but I don't think we have enough just for this side. Because believe me, I certainly wasn't expecting this. Okay, so it might be first come, first served. If you leave, it's okay. Thank you very much.